good.
Good evening. Can everybody take a seat, please?
What is it? It will in the next 5 minutes.
Wrong.
Just. Everybody's sitting down?
Good evening. 1.01, call to order. 1.02, the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Nothing in recognition tonight. 3, comments and questions from the floor, representatives of the PTA. Okay. 3.02, representatives of the school employees. 3.03, representatives of the Mishawaka Education Foundation. Sorry. Wow. Okay. 3.04, general public. We have David Strawn who would like to speak.
Madam President, school board members, Mr. Barker, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Strawn. I reside and own property at 305 George Street in Mishawaka. I have no group affiliation. I'm not a vendor, contractor, employee, retired annuitant, or creditor of the school city of Mishawaka, nor do I have a personal or business relationship with any school city vendor. I have the following questions relative to this evening's agenda. Item 9.05, recommendation to approve the 2021 school bus purchase. With respect to the 78-passenger wheelchair-equipped bus, on page 7 of 8 of the PDF price comparison sheet, it shows dealer option B401, perimeter view 360, external safety camera system. Question, is this a stop arm camera or something entirely different? Please explain. Several lines below the dealer option B401 entry is an entry entitled camera system allowance at, excuse me, at $3,549 to BB and IC for comparison. Please explain exactly what this entry is and what school city is buying for $3,549. Item 9.06. Recommendation to approve resolution 2021-008, transferring personal property to the city of Mishawaka. One very simple question. Where is the list of personal property mentioned in item 9.06 and in the resolution which school city is seeking to be transferred to the civil city of Mishawaka? That concludes my remarks for this evening. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you. It seems I was so excited to get started that I skipped over 1.03, the adoption of the agenda. It is recommended that the agenda for April 21st, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees be adopted as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we'll move on. 4, the consent agenda. 4.01, approval of the minutes of the March 24th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees. It is recommended that the minutes of the March 24th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees be approved as presented. 4.02, approval of the bill warrants and payroll. It is recommended that the bill warrants and payroll in the amount of $5,130,739.42 be approved for payment from the appropriate funds. 4.03, approval of the March financial report. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the March financial report as presented. 4.04, acceptance of donations. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees accept the donations as listed and documented. Always thank you. 4.05, overnight extended student trip request. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the overnight extended student trips as presented. 4.06, approval of the consent agenda. It is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to 5, vision initiatives. Roadmap to recovery. Oh, he did sign up. Again, moving too quickly. Jeff Emmons would like to speak. Jeff, please come to the podium. I apologize. Is that real? I didn't think so. I knew that was true.
Come on, Jeff.
5.01, Roadmap to Recovery Plan Update Number 2, Ms. Hickle.
Thank you, President Parks, members of the board. Tonight, we will continue our focus on updating you on federal stimulus funding and strategic planning to address our recovery needs. Since our last update, we've continued to purchase the necessary equipment to keep our schools safe and healthy, as well as addressing learning loss. We have purchased and installed more bottle filling stations in each of our schools. We have purchased additional curricular materials for our IRE3 remediation program, hired more after-school remediation staff, and we are currently providing additional robust interventions for our students identified in need of additional supports. But our larger focus tonight is on the increased teacher opportunities targeted at continuous improvement and student success. Tonight, we bring to you 2 position descriptions for the 2021-22 school year that we believe will have a profound impact on students and staff. The first position description that I'd like to discuss with you, and you have in your papers in front of you, is the elementary Project Lead the Way teachers. Upon approval tonight, an additional special will be offered at all elementary buildings for all students K to 6, starting next year. This special would allow for our students to participate in Project Lead the Way, known as PLTW, at the elementary level, much like the great opportunities we offer at John Young Middle School and Mishawaka High School. This would provide our students in K to 6 with a minimum of 60 minutes of weekly Project Lead the Way science and STEM instruction, and would be taught by a certified SCM teacher specializing and trained in PLTW. This will create specialized positions, creating opportunities for our teachers who are passionate about STEM and science instruction. This will also provide more prep time for our classroom teachers. PLTW teachers will support our efforts to meet the state expectations to teach computer science and problem-based learning without placing increased responsibilities on our classroom teachers. We believe this new PLTW teacher position will help us not only face challenges and concerns at the elementary level, but will also bring continuity of programming and science instruction K to 12. It'll create opportunities for teachers to ease the burden of increased state expectations. It'll provide high engagement, hands-on, problem-based learning opportunities for all of our elementary students. The second position that I'd like to discuss is a position description for instructional coaches. School City of Mishawaka solidifies its commitment to growing teacher leadership to assure every student receives high-quality education from teachers who are competent, confident, and connected with the students we serve. Building capacity within our teaching ranks provides opportunities for teachers to powerfully impact student achievement by supporting, growing, and improving Tier 1 instruction. We want to build a culture of teachers contributing to instructional improvements and expanding their influence in helping their peers refine classroom practices through job-embedded professional development. The overriding philosophy is tied to the belief that improving student learning requires improving the instruction that they receive. There is no better way to do this than to empower our teachers to lead this effort. Now more than ever, we need to address learning loss and the gaps in achievement by equipping and supporting our teachers to diagnose and address deficiencies. Instructional coaches and Project Lead the Way teachers will still be on a teacher salary. Additional learning opportunities will be provided for teachers to learn how to be an instructional coach and to become PLTW certified. These learning opportunities will be funded through Title II and other competitive grants, which FCM is already currently executing. The estimated cost for the 6 elementary Project Lead the Way positions is $455,000. The estimated cost for 4 to 5 instructional coaching positions K to 12 for the entire district is $650,000. These positions will be funded through federal stimulus funding, and for sustainability, we would look to include these positions in the next referendum. The timeline for these positions is as follows. Upon approval tonight, we will post the Project Lead the Way job description and the elementary instructional coaching positions. Once those positions close, we'll conduct interviews for Project Lead the Way teachers on 5-6 and 5-7 approximately, and we will interview for elementary instructional coaches May 10th through May 12th, with the potential for a round 2 to follow. At that time, then, starting May 10th through May 19th, we'll open up the job application for secondary instructional coaches with their interviews to follow. We need the master schedules at John Young and the high school to be refined before we can move forward with the instructional coaching at the secondary level. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
I have a couple. Can you repeat how many instructional coaches and then how many Project Lead the Way teachers we will have?
Sure. We are currently looking at 6 elementary Project Lead the Way teachers to serve 7 buildings.
Okay.
And the approximate cost of that will be $455,000.
Okay.
And then an estimated cost for 4 to 5 instructional coaching positions as high as $650,000.
Okay, so simple question.
I anticipated this one.
Why wouldn't you just have one Project Lead the Way teacher for each elementary school?
Right now, we need in between 5 and 6. Our smaller buildings don't require a full-time teacher, much like some of our other specials, which are shared between buildings.
Okay.
But we want to make sure that we have additional time in between classes for those teachers to set up. So that's when we went with the higher number of 6 instead of 5.
Gotcha.
But at this time, we don't need 7. 7 wouldn't be very efficient for staffing.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So it's recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the Roadmap to Recovery Plan Update 2 as presented, including these job postings as presented.
So moved.
Second. Again, any questions?
I'm
All
sorry,
those in
I did,
favor? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have one more question. Okay. For the instructional coach, you said 4 to 5? Mm-hmm. Okay, and what buildings would they serve?
They would serve all of our buildings, so.
All of them, okay.
We're looking at roughly 2 full-time positions, but those could be shared amongst people at the elementary buildings, 1 at John Young and 2 at Mishawaka High School. Again, those are full-time equivalents, so it could be occupied by multiple people with reduced schedules.
Okay.
Anything else? It's been motioned and seconded. Can I have a vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 5.02, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. Mr. Barker, Ms. Hickle.
Thank you, President Parks. Ms. Hickle's going to begin this presentation, and then I will follow.
Thank you. School City of Mishawaka believes each child, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, creed, economic advantage or disadvantage, native language, sexual orientation, gender identity, or mental, emotional, or physical challenges, can be successful, and as a result, our purpose is to provide a healthy and safe learning environment that helps each child achieve by engaging, supporting, and challenging each of them. We believe we have a moral, ethical, and professional obligation to eliminate racial and ethnic disparities in achievement so that our students of all races and ethnicities are not only well-educated, but also prepared to succeed in our rapidly changing, racially and culturally diverse world. This requires the conscious and deliberate examination of our institutional beliefs, our behaviors, our policies, our programs, practices, systems, and structures within our school corporation to identify and eliminate those that may perpetuate racial and ethnic disparities in achievement in order to counteract the impact of contemporary and historical discrimination and the impact on student achievement. 3 definitions we'd like to establish for this work. One is equity. Equity is promoting justice impartially and fairness within the procedures, processes, and distribution of resources. Tackling equity issues require an understanding of the root causes of outcome disparities within our society. Diversity is the presence of differences that may include race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, language, disability, age, religion, or even political perspective. Inclusion is the outcome to ensure that those that are diverse actually feel and/or are welcomed. Inclusion outcomes are met with a culture that is truly inviting to all. To the degree to which diverse individuals are able to participate fully in the decision-making processes and development of opportunities within an organization or a group. Our work on this initiative was first identified as a need through the Learning by Design and our commitment to the continuous improvement process. Additionally, COVID-19 pandemic has disproportionately affected and exacerbated existing inequalities for traditionally underrepresented people of color and low-income communities that will have ramifications well beyond this pandemic. Knowing that our community, like so many others, has work to do to address these identified inequalities, Barb Michaelis, Katie Stockstill, Corey Laban, and myself have been working to research, study the success of others, create timelines, and a scope of work to do this very important work collectively as an organization. The launch phase, as you can see reflected on this timeline, officially begins tonight with our public commitment and declaration to equality, diversity, and inclusion. After tonight's resolution, we will share this information with staff and invite those interested to join us in this work by joining us on a committee that will lead this work. All staff will also be invited to attend a Leader in Me booster on the brain science behind unconscious bias and how this shapes our human behaviors and decision making. In May and June, we'll begin the engagement phase, forming the equity committee that will drive this work. The committee will be comprised of staff, administration, community members, parents, and will include student input. We are excited to begin this phase as many people have reached out to us supporting the need for this work and expressing a desire to participate in the positive change. We will complete an equity assessment, begin data collection, and start to analyze our policies, practices, and procedures through the lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The planning phase will consist of goal setting based on the findings of the committee. It will result in an action plan and a professional learning plan to meet the established goals. And finally, the action plan will lead us to the learning and leading phase, which will be ongoing through the upcoming years. Our goals for this work and for our community is to ignite curiosity. Curiosity is at the heart of learning, at the heart of change, and at the heart of improvement. One of our goals is to ignite curiosity within our students, within our staff, and within our community. Much of the work in the investigate phase centers around being open to investigating our current state, looking for positive solutions, and implementing those solutions. Our goals also include inviting connections within our students, families, and community partners, making all of our community stronger. Our commitment here tonight in terms of equity is that we commit to working actively to challenge and respond to bias, harassment, and discrimination. We are committed to equal opportunity for all persons and do not discriminate on the basis of race, color, national origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, or disability. We commit to increasing, respecting, and celebrating diversity, which is expressed in a variety of forms, but all of which celebrate the many ways we are each unique. And finally, we commit to pursuing the deliberate efforts to ensure that our school community is a place where differences are welcomed, different perspectives are respectfully heard, and when every individual feels a sense of belonging and inclusion. We know that by creating a vibrant climate of inclusiveness, we can be more effective at leveraging the resources of diversity to advance our collective capabilities. School City of Mishawaka is committed to dismantling inequity for improved outcomes for all of our students, and this tonight is our call to action. Mr. Barker.
So tonight what we're going to do is ask you to approve a resolution to initiate this initiative to make School City of Mishawaka a welcoming place for all students, all staff, And I want to read that resolution for you prior to asking for your approval. It's also included in your board packets. Whereas School City of Mishawaka is committed to providing an inclusive, learner-centered culture for all students through relevant learning experiences supported by strong relationships that celebrate diversity and promote equity among students, staff, parents, and the community. Therefore, be it resolved, School City of Mishawaka will not discriminate nor tolerate any form of discrimination in its educational or employment activities for any reason, including race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, national origin, age, or disability. School City of Mishawaka will foster a culture and environment that does not marginalize, treat unfairly, or disrespect any member of our school community, and will recognize the uniqueness and individuality of all students, educators, staff, and administrators so they have an opportunity to succeed. School City of Mishawaka will fulfill our duty to foster a safe, healthy, and inclusive learning environment to ensure that all are treated with dignity and respect, and to do our part to bring about positive change, end discrimination, and secure equality and inclusion for all. So at this time, it's recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Resolution as presented.
So moved. Second.
Second?
Any questions or comments? I only have one, and you would think in 2021 we wouldn't have to keep having the same conversation that has been going on for years and years and years. So I'm grateful that Mishawaka as a whole is going to stand up and continue to have this conversation until the changes are made. All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you. 6, reports and discussion items. Legislative update. Mrs. Lehman, and Mr. Barker.
Thank you, Holly. I want to start tonight by acknowledging Mr. Barker and his continued effort to advocate for our schools and public schools in general. He, in collaboration with other superintendents, wrote an article which was published April 9th in the South Bend Tribune and shared statewide. The article called for action from our legislators to equitably provide funding for schools, especially those with a large number of special education students and English language learners. It's a good article, and I would recommend that you all read it. So thank you, Wayne, for your continued involvement in voicing your support for the needs of our diverse population of students. Last week, an updated state revenue forecast was released by the State Budget Committee that alleged the possibility of an additional $2 billion in tax revenue to be collected over the next fiscal year. That was great news. And grassroots advocacy groups like the Indiana State School Board Association took advantage of this and called upon legislators to devote a substantial amount of this extra money to traditional public schools. Well, yesterday, as many of you are aware, Governor Holcomb held a news conference and introduced a new budget proposal for the state. He announced that an allotment of at least $1.9 billion would go to fund K-12 education over the next 2 years. And the plan will also cover an additional $600 million annually after the second year. This is an all-time high record amount of dollars being invested in education. This also means that tuition support will grow by 4.6% in the first year of the budget and another 4.3% in the second year for a total of more than $1 billion new dollars. This is great news, and Wayne will have some extra news to relate to this as well. The funding also will direct at least 45% of the tuition support dollars to teacher pay and to not reduce their spending on salaries from one year to the next. Again, great news, as our teachers are finally being prioritized in this new budget so that Indiana can begin to catch up to neighboring states and offer competitive salaries. On the flip side of this good news is that the private voucher system and the educational scholarship accounts are not going away. The new budget will substantially expand funds to both programs as well. With this being said, overall, I feel this is an historic win for our students, teachers, and families. The investment that the state is projecting towards our schools and communities is a welcome commitment. Wayne?
Thank you, Mrs. Lehman. That's a great overview of really what's happened over the last week and a half. It is a historic event. In my career, I've never seen anything like this, certainly in my time as a superintendent of 12 years. Nothing compares to what happened over the last week. Mrs. Lehman talked to you about last week. The state revenue projections are always updated late in the legislative session. So in December, state revenue projections were given to the legislators, and for about 3.5 months, our state legislators have been negotiating how that budget would look based upon that revenue. And then late last week, the revenue projection was updated to include $2 billion over the next biennium budget of increased revenue. That is significantly different than the projections they were working with in December. As a result of that, the state legislators had to create an entirely new budget, and they had basically 1 week to do so. Now, this is where the supermajority probably worked together behind the scenes from the time that information was out, and they were able to come forward with a budget yesterday that everyone really on both sides of the aisle in Indiana are very supportive of. Mrs. Lehman gave you those numbers: 4.6% next year, in the upcoming year 4.3% in the second year, and those are across the state numbers, so that's the mean for all of our school districts, but never has anything been close to that. I think nearly 20 years ago, the numbers were 3.7 and 3.6 or something like that. So this is substantially different. This is a significant investment. I was very concerned when our legislators commissioned the teacher pay commission report, the governor did, and it seemed that when that came out, they only focused on what schools needed to do differently because they knew they were not going to have the revenue based upon the projections to fund the change for that. And so it became a very negative situation, especially when they were looking to expand voucher legislation along with the education savings accounts, scholarship accounts for families. So, and they did all of that without any kind of commission suggesting they needed to. So it was a very frustrating first 3.5 months that drastically changed. And I, as Mrs. Lehman said, I have tried to advocate as much as possible, and sometimes when I'm speaking the truth, it probably hasn't been well received. So I would be remiss right now if I did not commend our legislators for the work that they've done over the last week to acknowledge that this revenue is substantially different and to honor their commitment to that teacher pay commission report to make such a significant investment in teacher pay. And we're excited about that. This is a very positive thing. And again, I want to show my appreciation to our governor and our state legislators for their work to get this done over this session, because it is historic positive change that we'll be able to see as we go into this next school year. So the session's not done yet. Those budget runs were actually completed today at 10 o'clock a.m. So the earliest they can vote to approve this budget is tomorrow at 10 a.m. And I expect that to happen. There's certainly a lot of support around this. So much more positive last week of the session than I can ever tell you I've experienced in my career. So really good news for all of us. Good news for our entire school community.
Any questions or comments?
I have a quick comment. As I look across this room, I see a group of teachers here in the back wearing red. That's awesome. And then I think about what we've just talked about with increasing teacher pay and increased focus on really our teachers, and you're the heart of education, especially in the K-12 world. And all I have to say is just keep doing your best. going down to Indianapolis and wearing red and making your statement there. Ms. Foley, your comments during the pandemic to really bring light to what's going on in the teacher's life and how that affects yourself, your community, your students, your building, all very important. It's very important to raise your hand and say, hey, we have a problem. And so there's very rarely ever immediate action, right? That's not how life works. But if it's any consolation, people are listening. And we have our ears and our hearts open. So keep doing your good work. We're listening, we're doing our best, and our legislators, I think, are listening as well. So that's all I wanted to say.
I don't think anybody can say it better. Thank you, Amanda. All right, moving on. 6.02, March financial statements and monthly comparison. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Parks, members of the board. Yeah, Matt, if we could pull up that 331 document, please. As usual, if the board has any questions, please stop me at any time. We're going to start with the education fund. Taking a look at our revenue, at the end of March, we're roughly 25% of the way through the year. Year-to-date revenue is pretty much right on target at 24.5%. Down in the expenditure line items, of course, our salaries and benefits being the biggest piece of that are again right in line with where we would expect them to be. We have been saving money on supplies. I've been a little bit surprised the last couple months that our supply purchases haven't increased. But again, we are saving a little money on supplies. Might have been due to some supplies left over from last year in the buildings, I'm not sure. But it is a decrease as I compare that line item to previous years. But overall, total expenditures pretty much right in line with where they were budgeted at 24.72%. And we ended the month with a cash balance of $4,946,000. So again, no real surprises in the education fund, pretty much following right along with where we budgeted, with one exception, and that might be some slight savings in our supply purchases. Really, the next fund, the referendum operating fund, there's really no revenue that comes in until June and December. Looking down below at the salaries and the benefits, and they are again pretty much right in line with where we've budgeted them. No real surprises in this fund. $833,000 at month end, but please keep in mind $532,000 of that is due to a temporary loan we'll repay at the end of the year. Matt, if we could just go right past the debt service fund and the referendum capital debt service fund to the operations fund. Again, revenue at this time of year, again, we don't receive any property taxes until June and December, so it's mostly just the transfers from the education fund, right in line, again, with where they were budgeted. Looking at expenditures, salaries and benefits, again, at just over 26% for both of those line items. Again, nothing out of the ordinary, pretty much right in line with where we would expect them. I don't think the bill got paid until April, so I can talk about it next month, but we did receive a very, very large gas bill for the month of February, as I believe most schools and other entities did. That had to do with the winter weather that was down in Texas that sort of disrupted everything, but we can talk about that next month. Operations fund at the end of March, $3,179,000. Again, right where we would have expected it when we budgeted. The school lunch fund, again, total revenue, again, the school lunch fund's been a little bit difficult to predict because it's so much, this school year has been so much different from previous ones, but I am happy with where we're at the end of March, $523,000 in that fund, and we had a large reimbursement for the month of March that'll show up in April. So I think between March 31st and June 30th, you'll see the school lunch fund start to increase a little bit as those reimbursements catch up with the expenditures. But again, no real surprises in the school lunch fund. I'm happy with what we've been able to do over the past 12 months. I know a lot of schools, they aren't doing as well as we are. And the curricular materials fund, Matt, again, very healthy cash balance in the curricular materials fund. I believe we'll be able to start to shift some curricular material purchases from the education fund into this fund as that balance is getting up there at about $745,000. We did do almost $5,000 in refunds in the month of March, and I think there'll probably be a similar amount in the month of April. These are being generated by the high school. Certain classes, certain activities couldn't take place, so we are refunding some fees to parents if those supplies weren't ordered or if those things didn't take place due to COVID. And then finally, the self-insurance fund, very healthy balance in the self-insurance fund. Ended the month with $928,000. The switch to Oxyant and the claims, they started to catch up in March. I think that they're going to be completely caught up by the end of April, and I think we'll all be very, very happy with where the cash balance is, and we're certainly happy with where it is at the end of March. So again, just wanted to point out that we're doing well in our self-insurance fund. And then finally, Matt, if you could just jump over to that other document in the yellow section there. Combined cash balance between our education and operations fund, $8,125,000. But if you look in the middle of that yellow section, you can see the year-to-date expenditures, and you can compare March 21 to March of 20, and you can see that there is some savings there. Typically, our expenditures continue to climb, as we give pay raises and whatnot. But again, there is some savings there, as you can see. So again, very happy with where we're at financially for March 31st of 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have, but things are pretty much right on target with where we expected them to be. So, thank you.
Thank you. 7 point, Human Resources, Personnel Report, Mr. Caldroni.
Thank you, President Parks, school board members. This evening is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the personnel report dated April 21st, 2021 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. 8, Curriculum Instruction and Technology. 8.01, Approval of the new school day schedules. Ms. Hickle, Mrs. Foley.
Thank you, President Parks, members of the board. As you're aware, there's been a lot of discussion, tension, and anxiety around the school day schedule's proposed changes. At our last meeting, you, the Board of School Trustees, challenged the administration to listen and work collaboratively with teachers to find solutions so that we may all support a schedule that benefits our students and our families. The leadership team, since that time, has attempted to listen to all of those concerns and consider additional suggestions that had been offered. Many teachers shared their support for increased student minutes, but also shared concerns about their autonomy to work flexibly outside of student hours in ways that were most conducive to their needs and their lifestyle. We have used this time since the last board meeting and the teacher feedback shared with us to evaluate how we might be able to reduce the required teacher minutes and the proposed options while still meeting the goal of increased instructional minutes for students and dedicated time for staff. It is important to note that times for teachers were originally increased with the proposed schedules in part for 2 reasons. One, there is a need for teachers to have enough time to complete minimal expectations outside of student hours for teacher responsibilities such as MTSS, case conferences, staff meetings, and contributing to school improvement efforts. In addition, there was a large contingencies of teachers asking us for equitable teacher schedules across grade levels. It does not go unnoticed and is greatly appreciated that teachers put in countless hours outside of their time in the classroom with students. Our teachers are dedicated, passionate, and professional. Our teachers go above and beyond for our students, for our school, and for our district. As leaders, we want to foster this professional climate, not damage it. Keeping that in mind, the leadership team desires to reduce the required teacher minutes by 60 minutes per week. This change is being recommended on 3 principles. First, our desire to create a culture of trust showing our view of teachers as professionals. Second, recognizing that designated teacher times before and after school will not be nearly enough for teachers to adequately perform their duties, but the assumption that teachers can best determine when and where they will complete their individual teacher preparations, grading, etc. 3, teachers will have an expectation to stay after designated times for teacher responsibilities, such as the aforementioned MTSS, case conferences, staff meetings, etc., when they are reasonably scheduled with advance notice. After our last meeting, we committed to surveying staff to collect feedback on their preferred schedule options. We utilized this feedback on the options receiving the most teacher support through the survey, along with the changes that we proposed for reducing the minutes by 60 minutes per week. Those changes are shown. On the proposed schedule, those were the options selected by teachers, and then you can also see a reflection of the proposed reduction in 60 minutes. You will see that the result is an end time for elementary teachers on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays of 3:30 in comparison to the originally proposed 3:50. You can also see a start time on non-PLC mornings 3 times a week from middle school teachers of 8 o'clock, which is in comparison to the originally proposed 7:40. And finally, an end time for high school teachers of 3:25 on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, in comparison to 3:40. This still allows dedicated time for PLCs and safe student supervision, but will give teachers more flexibility in when and how they choose to plan and prepare for instruction. It is our hope that this flexibility will help us to create the professional culture that will both support teachers as professionals as well as successfully promote school improvement efforts. Upon sharing these suggestions of the reductions in minutes with MEA leadership team, they expressed their appreciation and support for these changes. As with all of our joint decisions with MEA at SEM, this is being recommended in the spirit of continuous improvement, on the premise that we will pilot these times for teachers in the 2021-22 school year and determine if they work well for all involved. At this time, I invite MEA President Amy Foley up to share with you further the need for this time, the importance, and the power of this collaboration on our work towards redesigning school day schedules. Thank you, Amy.
Good evening. I want to begin by acknowledging that teachers all across the state choose to invest on a daily and weekly basis many hours of non-contract time to our job, our profession, our vocation. We come in early, we stay late, we spend weekends catching up on grading or planning the week ahead. We participate in professional development after hours, and many of us coach teams or sponsor clubs. To teach is to commit to time invested outside the school day. We knew that when we signed up, and we do what's best for our kids. Now let me introduce you to the term ancillary duties. At one time, ancillary duties were activities spelled out in the teacher contract that required teachers to work beyond the normal school day. In the beginning, an ancillary duty might be a staff meeting, a case conference, an open house night, or maybe a training session for administering a state test. As the years went on, ancillary duties expanded. In our own corporation, teachers in various buildings found that ancillary duty language was requiring them to spend more and more evenings and weekends at the school, hosting activities, meeting community members, running sporting events, or promoting the school, all with no extra pay. It was not only in SCM, but around the entire state, that corporations used the ambiguity of the ancillary duties to compel teachers to work extra hours, sometimes with little advance notice, and always with no extra pay. Teachers put their collective foot down in the state of Indiana, and through a series of court battles, it was determined that ancillary duties could no longer be included in a contract, and teachers could not be compelled to work beyond the normal contract day without extra compensation. This was a victory for teachers, though many continued to invest their time after hours. For these teachers, the victory was in knowing that the investment was now their choice and not their obligation. Now fast forward to 2019 and the Governor's Commission on Teacher Pay. In an effort to make themselves heard in a state that showed the least growth in teacher pay, many teachers around Indiana committed to honoring the contract day, but no more. More than ever before, administrators found teachers declining to stay past the end of the contract day for extra meetings or duties. It is in this environment that SCM began planning for changes to the instructional day. Senior level administrators found themselves in a position of needing to delineate a longer contract day in order to guarantee contract time availability from their teachers. When the proposed school day schedules were released last month, a number of concerns were expressed by teachers and shared with administrators, either directly or through MEA representation. One of the most common concerns by far was the unexpected extension of the teacher workday. As discussion of this concern progressed, it became clear that there was a definite need for teachers to be available after school for administrative tasks. However, it also became apparent that this need was not on a daily or even weekly basis outside of PLC. It seemed to both SCM and MEA that extending the contract day each of the 5 days was excessive given the need, but administrators had no other way to legally guarantee that teachers were available. It was at this point that SCM extended an offer to MEA. If teachers would be willing to commit time outside the contract day to infrequent, reasonable, short-duration administrative needs, then the administration believed it could agree to a shorter teacher workday than had been proposed to the board at the last meeting. IERB, the state board that oversees contract language, will not allow us to put this gentleman's agreement, as it were, into contract language. However, SCM and MEA believe that our professional relationship is solid enough to move forward with the understanding that administrators will not be unreasonable in the frequency, nature, or timing of the requests for extended time, and that teachers will not be unreasonable in responding to these occasional needs. There are not many districts where this type of action would even be considered. It requires trust, mutual respect, and a solid win-win attitude. SCM and MEA have demonstrated this type of relationship many, many times this year alone. It is on this foundation that we now stake our professionalism and try to balance the needs and desires of both administrators and teachers. In the hopes of moving forward from what has been a difficult but frank conversation, we are mutually agreeing not to overstretch our rights as employers or as employees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. As the school day schedules work has been the first step in this process, these changes being presented to you tonight for your approval will launch us into the next phase. The next step then is to move to the building level to make decisions on how to best maximize the increase in instructional minutes. There will be some consistency in expectations across the district, but also opportunities for individual building level decisions to best meet their unique needs. Teacher input at the building level will help to ensure that the use of additional instructional minutes best meets the needs of each individual building. So at this time, we ask that you approve the school day schedules for the 2021-22 school year as presented.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? I think my only comment is, on this situation, is when Amy gets up and speaks to us, it is as a whole. It is not divided for one side or the other. It is factual, it is honest, and it is for the better good of a corporation. So I commend you for always standing neutral, but with direction, and how incredibly important it is to have someone like you on the MEA who fights for the corporation and with the administration as well. So thank you very much for that. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to 9, business and operations. Approval to purchase 75-inch castable TV solution. Project Lead the Way engineering lab devices and refresh of classroom teacher devices. Mr. Motley.
Good evening. Since 2018, the district technology has been shifting to Chromebooks as the main hardware platform for teachers and students. Recently, high school teachers were surveyed on the use of their existing hardware to determine concerns with a shift to Chromebooks at the high school level. Art, music, and engineering identified software required for curriculum that will need to continue with the PC or Mac. Other departments may continue on with and move towards Chromebooks. Capable devices will be provided to those departments, the music, engineering, and art, to support their curriculum. With the completion of this purchase, teachers and students K-12 will be unified behind the Chrome operating system and Google Workspace for Education platform, allowing teachers to better guide their students in the use of technology through instruction. Additionally, Vivi, a device-agnostic casting solution, will allow for teachers to wirelessly display their students and their own Chromebook to a TV. Vivi has been piloted in an SEM elementary, middle, and high school classroom to determine feasibility and impact on the school infrastructure and has been well received by teachers and the technical requirements. The agnostic nature of the Vivi will allow for flexibility in any future device considerations without being locked into a single hardware platform. The Vivi will be combined with a 75-inch commercial TV with 3-year warranty and cart. The Project Lead the Way laptops at the high school engineering program are also due to be refreshed. PC laptops provide the necessary hardware to support the specialty software requirements of Project Lead the Way. Quotes were obtained from Troxel, IT Savvy, SHI, and CDWG, as illustrated in the tables below. CDWG was the lowest, most responsive bidder. The 2021 Common School Fund and Referendum Operating Fund will be used to support this purchase. At this time, the administration recommends that the board approve the purchase of technology devices as presented for $506,642.25.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9.02, recommendation to approve services with course and fire security. Mr. Faulkner.
Yes, good evening, President Parks, Mr. Barker, members of the board. School city operations continue to analyze various service contracts on a routine basis to make certain that we're receiving the most cost-effective, responsive, and responsible professional services. School City of Mishawaka has utilized course and fire and security for 20 years or more to service our buildings' fire extinguishers, fire alarms, sprinkler systems, and kitchen suppression systems. Currently, we do not have a contract with Corson, and after analyzing the costs of what we've been doing business with them over the past several years, it's our recommendation that we enter into a 3-year agreement with them at an annual cost of $29,355. It'll be a slight savings, but I think it's smart for us to move into this contract because of notorious for price hikes year after year after year. So we would be saving at that point. So with that, I would recommend that we would enter an agreement with Corson Fire and Security. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Move for approval.
Second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 9.03, recommendation to approve resolution number 2021-007 regarding the paid leave benefits. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Parks. If the board recalls, back on February 10th, the Board of School Trustees approved Resolution 2021-006. That resolution extended paid leave benefits associated with the COVID-19 pandemic through March 31st of 2021. For your approval this evening is Resolution 2021-007. If passed, these same paid leave benefits will now be extended through June 30 of 2021 for any employees who have not exhausted their FFCRA leave. So it's not a reset, it's simply extending the deadline for anybody who hasn't taken advantage of those leave benefits. If passed, this resolution would be effective retroactively to April 1st, the day after the previous resolution ended.
Move for approval.
So moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 9.04, recommendation to approve MOU with Mishawaka Education Association. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Parks. Similar to last time, as part of extending that FFCRA leave associated with now Resolution 2021-007, for our teaching staff, a memorandum of understanding is necessary between the school corporation and the Mishawaka Education Association. So this MOU, so I'm asking for approval of this MOU as presented.
So second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 9.05, recommendation to approve the 2021 school bus purchase.
Thank you,
Mr.
President.
Newman?
Thank you, President Parks. Per School City of Mishawaka's bus replacement plan, replacement of bus number 11 was scheduled for calendar year 2021. Bus number 11 is a Thomas yellow bus with a wheelchair lift that was originally purchased back in 2009. The Operations Department has determined that a similar-sized bus with wheelchair lift makes the most sense when looking at the makeup of our current fleet. While not originally scheduled for replacement until next year, the administration would like to also replace bus number 2. Bus number 2 is a 14-passenger white activity bus originally purchased in 2008. The Operations Department has determined that a similar-sized bus makes the most sense when looking at the makeup of our current fleet. So in other words, under normal circumstances, even though both of these buses are really in need of replacement, we tried to spread out the replacement of these buses so that it's not too big of a hit to our operations fund in any one given year. But because we now have these stimulus funds that can be used towards the purchase, we would like to replace 2 buses this year. So it is a change from our bus replacement plan due to having additional revenue to make those replacements. But both buses are beyond their original useful life and both are in need of replacement. Assistant Director of Operations Ken Kallenbach utilized the Central Indiana Educational Services Center Cooperative Purchasing Program, and Curlin Bus Sales and Leasing provided the lowest quote on both buses. To answer Mr. Strawn's questions, the first camera, there's 2 camera items listed for the yellow bus. The first one is sort of like what happens in a lot of newer vehicles where you put your car in reverse and it shows you what's behind you and what's on the side of you in the rear view mirror. So it's to assist the bus driver in the rare occasion that they actually need to back up. The other camera, the allowance, that's your typical cameras inside the bus that monitor the activity that's going on inside of the bus. So one is the exterior cameras. It's not technically a stop arm camera, but it's for reversing. The other is the more standard camera that's within the bus, so you can go back and review it if there happens to be an issue. But again, Curlin Bus Sales and Leasing offered us a total trade-in of $4,500 on our 2 old buses, which brings the total net purchase price to $181,427. And again, these 2 buses will be purchased with CARES Act 2.0 or ESSER 2 grant funding. So happy to answer any questions, but we're asking for your approval of the purchase of these 2 buses.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. 9.06, recommendation to approve resolution number 2021-008, transferring personal property of the city of to the city of Mishawaka. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, President Parks. First, to address Mr. Strawn's question, I realized yesterday that when I uploaded the resolution document, I did not include the attachment. So the attachment is now part of the board docs, and it is viewable. So I believe the board or anyone could go on there and view that document to see the list of items. But yes, I apologize. It wasn't originally part of the original attachment. But it is there now. Back on October 28th of 2020, the Board of School Trustees approved Resolution 2020-009, which ultimately gave the administration approval to work toward the transfer of Hannah Lindell Children's Museum assets to the History Museum, again, via St. Joseph County. As part of the process, School City Mishawaka administration has also been working with representatives from the City of Mishawaka on transferring certain items to the city. These are items tied to the history of Mishawaka that the city plans to display in the new City Hall once renovated. So with your approval, Resolution 2021-008 transfers that list of items to the city for the cost of $1.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to policy updates. 10.01, second reading of policies, volume 33, number 1, November 2020. Ms. Pettit.
Good evening, Board. I would like you to consider this the second reading of all of our policies that were presented at the last board meeting, and it is recommended that the Board of School Trustees approve the revised policies as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Moving on to communications, public announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of School Trustees will be held on May 12, 2021, 6 p.m. at the Administration Center, 1402 South Main Street, Mishawaka, Indiana. If there is nothing more, meeting is adjourned.